Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had Surge Quirk but better than nejire. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in the doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, a scent that would forever be associated in Inko Midoriya's mind with the sound of her own heart breaking, or perhaps, the sound of it jump-starting. Izuku Midoriya, 4 years old and vibrating with the kind of kinetic energy that only a child expecting a miracle could possess, sat on the edge of the examination table. His legs swung back and forth, his all-might action figure clutched so tightly in his hand that the plastic was beginning to warm. So Dr. Tsubasa grunted, adjusting his thick goggles. He tapped the X-ray illuminated on the wall. You're worried because the boy hasn't breathed fire or pulled the telephone toward him yet. Yes, Inko said, twisting her hands in her lap. Most of the other children in his kindergarten class have already manifested. The Bakugo boy next door is already setting off small explosions. Izuku is, well, he's just Izuku. Izuku looked up, his eyes wide and green, shimmering with unshed hope. Please, he thought. Please let me be a hero. Well, Mrs. Midoriya, the doctor sighed, swiveling his chair around. You can stop worrying about whether he has a quirk. The pinky toe joint is missing, indicating evolution. He definitely has the genetic markers. Inko exhaled a breath she felt she'd been holding for a year. Oh, thank goodness. However, the doctor continued, his voice dropping an octave, it's not a simple mutation. We ran a metabolic stress test while he was in the waiting room. His resting heart rate is nearly double the average for a child his age. Inko froze. Is he sick? No. He's an engine. Dr. Tsubasa leaned forward. Izuku, listen to me. Try to push. Not like you're going to the bathroom, but like, imagine there is a light bulb in your chest. Try to turn it on. Izuku blinked. He looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. He looked down at his all-might toy. I am here, he thought. I am here. He closed his eyes. He searched inward. Usually, he just felt the hum of his own excitement, a buzzing sensation that made it hard to sit still. He focused on that buzz. He grabbed it mentally and squeezed. VMMM. A sound, low and throbbing like a high-tension wire, filled the room. What is that? Inko gasped. Izuku felt hot. Not the heat of a fever, but the heat of a friction burn running through his veins. The air around him began to distort, rippling like heat haze off asphalt in July. Small sparks of emerald electricity danced across his skin, arcing from his freckled cheeks to his fingertips. Keep going, kid, the doctor urged, stepping back and pulling a protective visor down over his goggles. Izuku gritted his teeth. It felt heavy. It felt like trying to lift a car, but the weight was inside his stomach. He pushed harder. Crack boom. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't telekinesis. It was a raw, violent expulsion of force. A sphere of blinding green light detonated from Izuku's small body. It didn't burn, but it slammed into everything with the force of a solid wall. The jars of tongue depressors shattered. The medical cabinet dented inward. The window behind the examination table blew out completely, raining glass onto the street below. Inko screamed, shielding her face. Then silence. The green light faded instantly. Izuku sat there, his clothes slightly singed at the edges, smoke rising from his skin. He blinked, looking at his hands. They were glowing faintly, a soft bioluminescent green that faded into his skin tone. I did it! Izuku cheered, throwing his hands up. Mom! I did! His eyes rolled back into his head. He slumped forward, unconscious before he hit the floor. 10 years later. Midoriya, wake up. You're drooling on your algebra. Izuku snapped his head up, disoriented. A line of saliva connected his lip to page 42 of his textbook. He wiped it away frantically, his face flushing red as the class erupted into giggles. Sorry, sensei, Izuku mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Low blood sugar. Eat your bar and pay attention, the teacher sighed, waving a hand dismissively. He knew the drill. Everyone at Aldera Junior High knew the drill. Izuku reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a dense, foil-wrapped block. It was a high-calorie protein brick, specifically designed for weightlifters and Quirk users with high metabolic demands. It tasted like chalk and sawdust, but Izuku tore into it like a starving wolf. As he chewed, he felt the familiar thrum return to his limbs. The biodynamo, as the Quirk registry called it. It was a flashy name for a flashy power. Izuku could convert his body's stamina and caloric energy into a unique form of raw kinetic plasma. It wasn't just light, it had mass. He could shape it, shoot it, and ride it. It was stronger than almost anything else in his school. It also sucked. The doctor had called it hyper-inefficient conversion. In simple terms, Izuku was a Ferrari with a gas tank the size of a thimble. One big blast could knock out a villain, but it would also knock Izuku out cold. Glass Cannon Deku, the kids used to call him. Deku, a rough voice growled from the seat in front of him. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back, his chair creaking dangerously. He looked over his shoulder, red eyes narrowing. Stop chewing so loud. You sound like a cow. Sorry, Kaken, Izuku whispered, swallowing the dry lump. I skipped breakfast. Ha! You skipped breakfast? Bakugo scoffed, a small explosion popping in his palm. You trying to die? If you pass out during sparring today, I'm going to blast you awake myself. I'm sick of winning by default because you take a nap halfway through a fight. This was the nature of their relationship. In a different world, perhaps Bakugo would have bullied Izuku for being quirkless. In this world, Bakugo bullied Izuku for being inefficient. To Bakugo, Izuku was a waste of potential. He saw the green lightning. He saw the destructive power that rivaled his own explosions, and he hated that Izuku couldn't use it for more than 30 seconds without collapsing. Bakugo viewed it as a personal insult, that someone with a Tier 1 quirk was too weak to wield it. I won't pass out, Izuku said, his voice firming up. I've been training. Training? Bakugo sneered. Eating donuts isn't training, it's carb loading. The teacher slammed a ruler on the chalkboard. Since you two have so much energy, perhaps you'd like to share your high school aspirations with the class? Though I assume everyone already knows. The teacher picked up a stack of papers. Midoriya, Bakugo, you're both aiming for UA, correct? The class went silent. Usually, aiming for UA was a joke for anyone outside the top percentile. But for these two, the silence was born of respect and fear. Damn right, Bakugo said, kicking his feet up onto his desk. And I'm going to be the only one from this backwater school to make it. I'll surpass All Might and become the top hero. I'll be the richest, the strongest. And Midoriya, the teacher interrupted, looking at Izuku over his glasses. Your mock exam scores are in the top 5%. But the physical exam. I can do it, Izuku said, clenching his fist. The green glow pulsed faintly under his skin, reacting to his stress. I've figured out the output throttling. I can do it, the class murmured. They had seen Izuku shatter a backboard in gym class once. They had also seen him carried to the nurse's office immediately after. Hey, Midoriya, a classmate whispered. Maybe try Shiketsu? They have better support gear for, batteries like you. Izuku stared at his notebook, titled Hero Analysis for the Future number 13. He traced the drawing of his own costume design, bulky bracers, energy storage tanks that didn't exist yet. I don't want to be a battery, he thought. I want to be a hero. The final bell rang, signaling freedom. Izuku packed his bag quickly, eager to get to the gym. For the past 10 months, he hadn't just been studying, he had been transforming. If his quirk used calories as ammo, then his body was the magazine. The larger the magazine, the more shots he could fire. At 14, Izuku was built like a linebacker. He wasn't tall, but he was dense. His uniform strained around his shoulders and thighs. He spent 4 hours a day lifting heavy iron, forcing his body to store glycogen in every muscle fiber. He ate 6 meals a day, totaling nearly 8,000 calories. He was a walking furnace. Going somewhere, nerd? Izuku stopped at the door. Bakugo was blocking the exit, flanked by his 2 lackeys. I'm going to the municipal gym, Kaken, Izuku said, hiking his yellow backpack higher. Leg day. Bakugo stared at him. He reached out and flicked Izuku's forehead. Thwack. Ow. You still don't get it, Bakugo muttered. He held up his hand. Sparks crackled, smelling of burned sugar. Your Quirk is Surge, right? Or Biodynamo, whatever the nerd name is. It's pure energy, but you treat it like a shotgun. You fire, you recoil, you reload. It's slow. I know, Izuku admitted. That's why I'm working on stamina. Stamina isn't the problem, you idiot. It's flow, Bakugo shouted, getting in his face. You bottle it up and let it explode. You need to let it run. Like an engine. If you stop and start, you stall out. How many times do I have to beat that into your thick skull? Izuku blinked. It was rare for Bakugo to give actual advice, even if it was wrapped in insults. Flow, whatever, Bakugo scoffed, turning away. Just don't die in the entrance exam. It'll look bad on my origin story if my rival chokes on his own tongue. He stormed off, hands in his pockets. Izuku watched him go, a small smile touching his lips. That was as close to good luck as Katsuki Bakugo ever got. The walk home was a routine of calculation. Distance to home, 2 kilometers. Walking pace. Caloric burn, negligible. Current hunger level, 4 out of 10. Izuku took a shortcut through the underpass. It was cooler here, the shadows stretching long against the curved concrete walls. He fished another protein bar, chocolate peanut butter this time, out of his pocket. He took a bite, lost in thought. Bakugo's words echoed in his head. Flow. Don't bottle it up. The problem was, Izuku's energy was volatile. Nejire Hato from UA, one of the few pros with a similar quirk, produced slow, spiraling waves. They were graceful. Izuku's energy was sharp. It was jagged. It wanted to pierce, not float. When he tried to flow, it felt like holding a fire hose that was turned on full blast. Splorch. The sound came from the manhole cover behind him. Izuku stopped chewing. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, not from static, but from instinct. A medium-sized skin suit. A wet, gurgling voice hissed. Izuku spun around. A massive wall of dark green sludge rose from the grate, eyes and teeth floating in the viscosity. It lunged before Izuku could even drop his bag. Don't worry, the villain crooned, the sludge rushing forward like a tidal wave. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. I just need to hide inside you. The sludge slammed into him. It was heavy and smelled of sewage and rot. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose. Izuku gagged, clawing at the liquid. His fingers sank in, finding no purchase. Can't breathe. Can't breathe. Stop struggling, the villain laughed. You're a hero, aren't you? You're helping me escape. Izuku's vision began to spot with black. His lungs burned. Panic flared, hot and bright. I'm going to die. I'm going to die here, and nobody will know. No. The thought was small at first, then roared into a flame. I am not dying in a sewer. Izuku stopped clawing. He needed to focus. The doctor's voice. Imagine a light bulb. No, Izuku thought. Not a light bulb. A reactor. He clenched every muscle in his body. He stopped trying to breathe air and started burning the fuel stored in his cells. The protein bar he'd just eaten, the lunch from 3 hours ago, the muscle glycogen, he ignited it all at once. Biodynamo, 5% output. Under the sludge, Izuku's skin turned a brilliant, blinding neon green. What? The villain gasped. You're hot. Stop it! The heat radiating off Izuku boiled the sewage instantly. Steam hissed. But heat wasn't enough. He needed kinetic force. Izuku planted his feet. He couldn't swing his arms, they were trapped. But his legs were free. He channeled the surge downward, into his calves, into the soles of his shoes. Jet step. He didn't kick the villain, he kicked the ground. Boom. A concentrated explosion of emerald energy blasted from his feet. It was like a grenade going off in the tunnel. The force rocketed Izuku upward, his body becoming a projectile. The sheer velocity was too much for the sludge's viscosity to hold. With a wet ryup, Izuku tore free from the villain's grasp, shooting up until his back slammed into the concrete ceiling of the tunnel. He defied gravity for a second, hovering there, wreathed in green lightning that popped and hissed like a downed power line. He coughed, spitting out slime. You little brat! The villain reformed, sending a tendril of sludge to whip at him. Izuku pushed off the ceiling. He fell, but he didn't plummet. He controlled the descent, energy venting from his back to stabilize him. I have one shot, Izuku calculated rapidly. Current energy levels, 60%. That burst took a lot. If I miss, I'm dead. He landed in a crouch, skidding backward. He brought his hands together, cupping them at his side. It was a pose straight out of a manga, but it helped him visualize the compression. Die! The villain roared, swelling up to fill the tunnel. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He felt the energy rushing to his palms. It was dense. It was heavy. It felt like holding a miniature star. He didn't let it spiral. He forced it into a straight line. He compressed it until it whined. Focus. Blast. He thrust his palms forward. The beam that erupted wasn't a wave. It was a lance. A solid column of green energy, no wider than a dinner plate, tore through the air. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched screech followed by the boom of displaced air. The beam punched straight through the center of the sludge villain. It didn't just pierce him, the kinetic friction scattered him. The force was so great that the wind pressure alone blew the rest of the slime apart, splashing it against the tunnel walls in a gruesome mural of muck. The beam continued, carving a groove into the asphalt road behind the villain before dissipating into sparkles of light. Silence returned to the tunnel. Izuku stood there, his arms smoking. His chest heaved. Hungry. The sensation hit him like a physical blow. His stomach cramped violently. His vision blurred. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the hollow ache of an empty tank. I won, he thought, his knees trembling. Hey! Kid! Izuku turned his head sluggishly toward the manhole cover. A man exploded out of the sewer system. He was massive, a towering figure of muscle and shadow, blonde hair swept up in two distinctive bunny ear tufts. I am he. All Might stopped. He blinked. He looked at the scattered remains of the villain dripping from the walls and ceiling. He looked at the smoking gouge in the pavement. Finally, he looked at the boy standing in the center of it all, a boy who was swaying like a leaf in the wind, glowing softly. Oh, All Might said, his booming voice dropping to a confused tone. You are already here. Izuku's eyes widened. All Might? The excitement spiked his heart rate. It was too much. The last of his glucose reserves burned up in a flash of fanboy joy. Autograph. Izuku whispered. Then he pitched forward, face planting into the concrete. When Izuku woke up, the world tasted like sugar. He blinked, realizing there was a straw in his mouth. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against the tunnel wall. A large, calloused hand was holding a juice box to his lips. Drink, young man. Recovery requires glucose. Izuku sputtered, sitting up so fast he headbutted the hand. All Might? I am here. The hero laughed, striking a pose that seemed to generate its own wind. And you are awake? Excellent. I was worried I'd have to carry you to a hospital, but I checked your pulse and realized you were merely empty. Izuku looked around. The villain was gone, scooped into two plastic soda bottles that sat near All Might's foot. You caught him? You caught him, All Might corrected. He crouched down, which for a man his size was like a building folding in half. His blue eyes were intense, lacking their usual shadowed inscrutability. That was reckless, young man. But effective. I didn't have a choice, Izuku mumbled, accepting another juice box All Might produced from a pocket. He drained it in 3 seconds. My quirk. It burns calories. If I run out, I pass out. Bioenergy conversion, All Might nodded. I've seen similar powers. But never with that kind of density. He gestured to the scorched asphalt. That wasn't a wave. That was a railgun. You have incredible output, but no stamina, Izuku said bitterly, looking at his hands. I took one shot and fainted. If there had been a second villain, I would be dead. I'm just a glass cannon. All Might was silent for a moment. The wind blew through the tunnel, whistling past the grate. Tell me, All Might said softly. When the slime grabbed you, what were you thinking? I was thinking that I couldn't breathe, Izuku said. And then? I was thinking that I refused to die. You didn't wait for a hero. No. And you didn't run away. I couldn't. All Might stood up to his full height. The sunlight at the end of the tunnel framed him in a halo. There are many pro heroes who have quirks suited for long battles, All Might began. Endurance types. Emitter types who can fire all day. But do you know what the most important quality of a hero is? Izuku shook his head. It is the ability to act when others freeze, All Might said. He pointed a finger at Izuku. Power can be trained. Stamina can be built. You can eat more, run more, lift more. But that instinct? The instinct to turn fear into firepower? That cannot be taught. Izuku felt tears pricking his eyes. He had spent his whole life being told his quirk was too dangerous to him, that he was a liability, that he was broken. You say you are a glass cannon, All Might smiled, his teeth blindingly white. But a cannon is still a weapon of war, young man. You just need to build a stronger chassis to hold it. All Might reached into his pocket and pulled out a notebook. Izuku gasped. It was his hero analysis number 13. It was signed. The signature took up 2 whole pages. I read your notes while you were out, All Might said, handing it back. You analyze heroes. You understand strategy. You knew exactly where to hit the sludge to scatter him without causing collateral damage to the tunnel supports. That is not just power. That is intellect. Izuku clutched the notebook to his chest. Thank you? Thank you so much. Do not thank me yet. All Might laughed. I have a question for you. You want to go to UA, correct? Yes. It's my dream. It will be hard, All Might warned. With your limitation, the entrance exam will be a nightmare. You will have to fight dozens of robots. If you pass out after one, you will fail. I know, Izuku said, his face hardening. I have 10 months. I'll figure it out. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the determination. He saw the embers of one for all. No, he didn't see one for all. He saw something else. He saw a boy who had his own fire, a fire that burned so hot it threatened to consume him. Tashinori Yagi had been looking for a successor. He had been looking for a vessel. But looking at Izuku Midoriya, he realized this boy didn't need a quirk. He didn't need power given to him. He already had too much of it. What he needed was a teacher. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice serious. Meet me at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Izuku blinked. The trash beach? Why? All Might turned, his cape swirling. Because if you want to fire that cannon more than once, we need to turn your body into a fortress. And I happen to be an expert in building symbols. He gave a thumbs up. You have the heart of a hero, kid. Now let's build the body to match it. 10 months later, the UA entrance exam. The massive gates of UA High School towered over the crowd of examinees. Hundreds of students stood in the plaza, a sea of nervous energy. Izuku Midoriya stood in the middle of them, adjusting his red sneakers. He looked different. The 10 months of All Might's Hell Camp had changed him. He was no longer just stocky. He was carved from granite. His neck was thick, his forearms roped with vascular muscle. He wore a compression tank top under his track suit, carrying a specialized utility belt filled with high-glucose gel packs. He took a deep breath. Caloric intake today, 12,000. Glycogen stores, 100%. Hydration, optimal. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo brushed past him, his eyes focused on the gate. But he didn't shove Izuku this time. He paused for a fraction of a second, glancing at Izuku's arms. Don't trip, Bakugo grunted. I won't, Izuku replied calmly. Welcome to the show. Present Mick's voice boomed from the speakers. Are you ready? Start. The gates groaned open. Most of the students hesitated, waiting for a countdown. Izuku didn't wait. Flow, he thought. Don't bottle it. Let it run. Green lightning crackled around his body, instantly enveloping him in a shroud of energy. It wasn't the violent explosion of the past. It was a controlled, humming aura. Full cowl surge mode. Izuku kicked off the ground. He didn't just run. He skated on a thin layer of projected energy, hovering an inch above the pavement to eliminate friction. He shot past the stunned students, a green blur leaving a trail of ozone in his wake. He was the first one into the city replica. A three-pointer robot lunged out from an alleyway, its mechanical claw reaching for him. Target acquired, the robot droned. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He raised his right arm, fingers extended like a knife. He condensed the energy around his hand into a flat, oscillating blade, severing wave. He swept his arm horizontally. The air shrieked. A crescent of green energy flew from his hand, slicing through the robot's torso like a hot knife through butter. The top half of the machine slid off the bottom half with a clang. Izuku kept moving, one down. Energy cost, 0.5%. He grinned. I can do this all day. As he dashed deeper into the city, seeking his next target, Izuku Midoriya felt a true smile break across his face. He wasn't a glass cannon anymore. He was a war machine, and he was just getting started. Part 1: The Furnace. The smell of burning rubber and ozone was suffocating inside the private training facility. It was a repurposed warehouse in the industrial district, rented out by a generous benefactor, All Might's credit card, and filled with enough reinforced steel to build a tank. Izuku Midoriya hung upside down from a pull-up bar, sweat pooling on his forehead and dripping onto the concrete below. He wasn't just doing sit-ups. He was doing sit-ups while holding a 50-pound plate against his chest, with a modified heart rate monitor strapped to his temple. Focus, Midoriya. All Might's voice boomed, though the hero himself was sitting in a folding chair, reading a USA travel guide and sipping tea. Your BPM is spiking. You're leaking energy. Izuku gritted his teeth, curling his body upward. I'm trying. A faint green aura flickered around his torso. BZZT, BZZT. It wasn't steady. It sparked and popped like a dying light bulb. Stop! All Might commanded. Izuku dropped to the floor, panting. He immediately reached for his gym bag, tearing open a packet of high-density glucose gel and squeezing it into his mouth. The taste was sickeningly sweet, like concentrated syrup, but his body craved it like a drug. As the sugar hit his bloodstream, the trembling in his hands ceased. You're doing it again, All Might said, standing up. He looked less like the symbol of peace and more like a concerned coach in his oversized yellow suit. You are treating your power like a faucet that is either fully open or fully closed. That is why you pass out. You dump the whole tank. It's hard to trickle it, Izuku gasped, wiping his mouth. The energy, it wants to get out. It's dense. It feels like holding back a sneeze, but the sneeze is a cannonball. All Might nodded. I spoke with a colleague of mine, Recovery Girl. We looked at your charts. Your Quirk, biodynamo, generates kinetic plasma. Most emitters, like young Bakugo, create their element outside the body or at the point of contact. You generate yours internally. All Might tapped Izuku's chest. It permeates your muscle fibers. That's why you get strong before you shoot. But because it's internal, the pressure builds up. You need a valve. A valve? Nejire Hato, All Might said. Do you know her? Third-year student at UA. Izuku's eyes lit up. The surge hero, Nejire-chan. Her quirk is wave motion. She converts vitality into shockwaves, correct. But her waves are slow, All Might explained. She releases them in spirals. The spiral motion stabilizes the energy, allowing her to fly and shoot for long periods, though it makes the attack slower. You, however, you don't spiral. Izuku looked at his hand. He summoned a small ball of green light. It jittered violently, the edges sharp and jagged. I compress, Izuku realized. Exactly? You pressurize it, All Might said. If Hato is a garden hose spraying a wide mist, you are a pressure washer. You force the energy into a straight line. It's faster, stronger, and cuts deeper. But the back pressure on your body is immense. All Might leaned in. For the next 6 months leading up to the exam, we are not just building muscle. We are building throttles. You need to learn to twist the energy inside your meridians before you release it. Keep the pressure high, but the volume low. 5%. No more. Izuku clenched his fist. The green light solidified. It stopped flickering. It hummed, a low, dangerous sound. 5%, Izuku whispered. I can do that. Part 2, The Science of Violence. The months bled into one another in a blur of iron, calories, and physics. Izuku's life became a mathematical equation. Input, 8,500 calories per day. Output, 4 hours of heavy lifting, 2 hours of quirk control, 3 hours of studying. Result, evolution. He wasn't just getting stronger, he was getting denser. His muscle fibers were adapting to the constant presence of the bioenergy, becoming tougher to withstand the internal recoil. One afternoon, 3 months before the exam, Izuku stood before a line of targets, thick sandbags hanging from chains. Visualization, Izuku muttered to himself. He closed his eyes. He felt the pasta lunch he'd eaten digesting, the chemical energy breaking down into glucose, the mitochondria in his cells converting that glucose into ADP, and his Quirk seizing that ADP and turning it into raw green plasma. Usually, he would push it all into his palms and fire. Not this time. Don't shoot. Coat. He forced the energy to stop at his skin. He imagined a second skin made of neon light, wrapping around his forearms, his shins, his torso. He opened his eyes. He wasn't glowing brightly. He was shimmering, a faint, translucent green veil clinging to his body. Biocowl, 5%. He stepped forward and punched the sandbag. He didn't wind up. It was a short jab. Thwack. The sound was like a gunshot. The sandbag didn't just swing, it folded in half. The sand inside was pulverized instantly, the bag bursting at the seams from the sheer kinetic transfer. Izuku stared at his fist. He wasn't winded. He wasn't hungry. I didn't expend the energy, he whispered, a thrill running up his spine. I just wore it. By keeping the energy contained around his limb, he created a hard light surface that hit harder than bone, while simultaneously boosting the speed of his muscle contraction. Excellent! All Might cheered from the corner, giving a thumbs up. Now try the legs. Mobility is key. Izuku crouched. He channeled the energy to the soles of his feet. Compression. Release. Jet step. Bang. He vanished. He didn't just jump. He teleported 3 meters to the right, his sneakers leaving scorched marks on the concrete. He skidded to a halt, smoke rising from his heels. It's jerky, Izuku critiqued himself, frowning. It's too explosive. I can't turn. Then don't run on the ground, All Might suggested. Nejire flies. You can too. But you're too heavy for floating. You need propulsion. Izuku looked up at the high ceiling of the warehouse. He jumped, firing a blast downward. He shot up 10 feet. As gravity tried to pull him down, he kicked the air, releasing a flat, condensed disk of energy beneath his foot. Solidified the air pressure. His foot connected with the energy disk. It held for a split second before dissipating, just enough time for him to kick off it. Kick. 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 He was running on the air. It wasn't graceful flight. It was violent aerial parkour, stepping on explosions of his own making. He landed in a crouch, grinning wildly. I call that aerostep. All Might laughed, a deep, hearty sound. You're ready, kid? You're definitely ready. Part 3. The Gates of Judgment. The day of the UA entrance exam dawned crisp and clear. The sky was a piercing blue, mocking the anxiety churning in the stomachs of hundreds of teenagers. Izuku stood at the gates of UA, his new yellow backpack, filled with protein bars and glucose gels, strapped tight to his back. He wore a dark green tracksuit with reinforced white stripes down the sides. He looked less like a student and more like an athlete arriving for the Olympics. His notebook was gone, replaced by a quiet, simmering confidence. Out of the way, Deku. Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, hands in his pockets. But the usual bite was missing from his voice. Bakugo paused, glancing at Izuku out of the corner of his eye. You didn't die during training, Bakugo noted. Nope, Izuku said. Did you? Bakugo scoffed, a smirk tugging at his lips. As if. Don't embarrass me out there. If you pass out in the first 5 minutes, I'll kill you myself. I have a plan, Kaken. Good. Because I'm going to get a higher score than you. As Bakugo walked away, Izuku felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a girl with a round face and brown hair, looking nervous. Excuse me. She squeaked. I saw you at the gate. You look so intense. Are you okay? You're vibrating. Izuku looked down. His hand was trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the surplus energy he'd loaded up on that morning, a 4,000-calorie breakfast. I'm okay, Izuku smiled, and for the first time in his life, it wasn't a nervous, wobbly smile. It was the smile of someone holding an ace card. Just, fully charged. Oh. Well, good luck. I'm Uraraka Ochako, Midoriya Izuku. Good luck to you too. The written exam was a breeze. Izuku had spent years analyzing quirks and hero laws. While others struggled with the questions about quirk ethics, Izuku wrote essays. He finished 10 minutes early, spending the remaining time eating a nutrient block quietly, ignoring the stares of the other examinees who wondered why he was eating a brick of brown sludge. Then came the practical exam. Izuku was assigned to Battle Center B. He stood in the massive crowd outside the industrial gates. He stretched his quads, checking his utility belt. Pocket A, quick-dissolve sugar tabs. Pocket B, high-density protein bar, hydration camel pack, filled with electrolyte solution. He looked like he was going to war. Look at that guy, a student with a sharp, rocky head whispered. Is he going hiking? He looks serious, another replied. But no quirk usage yet. Maybe he's quirkless. And start. Present mixed voice screamed from the tower. There was no countdown. The other students froze, confused. Izuku didn't. Lesson 1. Real heroes don't wait for a signal. Biocowl, 8%. The green lightning snapped into existence. It was louder than usual, a sharp crack that made the students nearby jump. Izuku didn't run. He launched. He leaned forward and exploded off his back foot. The concrete beneath him cracked. He was a green streak, tearing past the stunned crowd and through the open gates before anyone else had taken a step. What are you waiting for? Present Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. Part 4. The Green Comet. The mock city was vast, a labyrinth of concrete and steel. Izuku was alone in the lead. He scanned the alleyways as he moved, his eyes glowing faintly. Target acquired. 3 one-pointer robots rolled out from behind a building, their targeting lenses glowing red. Target lock, one droned. Izuku didn't slow down. He maintained his forward momentum. Don't shoot. Conserve fuel. Use the coating. He jumped, twisting his body in midair. He channeled the surge into his right leg, condensing the energy into a hardened shin guard of light. Smash! He kicked the lead robot's head. It didn't just dent, it sheared off. The force of the impact sent the headless chassis spinning into the second robot, knocking them both into a wall. The third robot raised a gun. Izuku landed, pivoted on one hand, and swept his leg low. A blade of energy extended from his foot, crescent kick, slicing through the robot's treads. It collapsed. 3 robots. 6 seconds. Energy expenditure, negligible. Too easy, Izuku breathed. He rocketed up the side of a building, digging his fingers into the concrete, aided by tactile energy pulses that acted like climbing spikes. He reached the roof and looked out over the city. The other students were pouring in now. Explosions rocked the entrance. He saw lasers, ice, and engines. I need to stay ahead of the pack, Izuku calculated. The big points will be deeper in the city. He sprinted to the edge of the roof and jumped. It was a 20-meter gap to the next building. In midair, he kicked. Aerostep. A green disc flared beneath his sneakers, giving him a second jump. Then a third. He bounded across the rooftops, bypassing the congestion on the streets. Below him, he saw a 3-pointer cornering a student. Izuku dropped from the sky like a green anvil. He didn't bother with a fancy move. He simply coated his fist and punched the robot vertically through the top of its chassis, driving it into the pavement. Whoa! The student gasped. Keep moving! Izuku yelled, already dashing away. 10 minutes in. Izuku was sweating now. The heat radiating from his body was intense. His quirk was a metabolic furnace. Using it raised his core temperature. He ducked into an alleyway, ripping open a gel packet and downing it in one squeeze. Score check. 45 villain points. That's a passing grade. But it's not a top score. He wiped his brow. He could feel the hunger gnawing at the edges of his mind. The thirst for energy. The beast inside wanted him to let go, to stop throttling the output. It wanted him to unleash a beam that would level a city block. No. Control. Efficiency. He heard a massive crash. The ground shook. Car alarms went off throughout the mock city. Izuku ran out of the alley. The sun was blocked out. Looming over the cityscape was the zero-pointer. It was colossal, taller than the skyscrapers, its green chassis grinding against the buildings as it moved. Its mere presence displaced the air, creating a windstorm. "That's huge," Izuku whispered. The other students were fleeing. It was a stampede of panic. "Run! It's the zero-pointer. There's no point fighting it." Izuku turned to run with them. That was the logical move. Avoid the unbeatable obstacle. "Ow!" The voice was faint, buried under the sound of crushing concrete. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the dust, he saw her. Uraraka. She was pinned under rubble, her leg trapped. The massive tread of the zero-pointer was descending toward her. It was 50 meters away. Closing fast. The other students were gone. Logic says run, instinct says, save her, Izuku growled. His body moved before his brain gave permission. He turned toward the Titan. Distance, 100 meters to the head. Height, 60 meters. Physical attacks, useless. It's too big. A punch won't stop it. Options, none, except one. Izuku reached into his belt and grabbed his emergency ration, a dense, calorie-packed bar meant for post-workout recovery. He shoved the whole thing into his mouth, swallowing it with a gulp of water. He felt the spike. The fuel hit his system. Warning, caloric overload imminent. One for all. Izuku muttered, though he didn't have that quirk. He was thinking of the sentiment. One for all the calories I'm about to burn. He crouched low. The green lightning around him intensified. It turned from a soft neon to a blinding, crackling white-green. The concrete beneath his feet melted into glass. Biodynamo, 20%. 40%. His muscles screamed. His veins bulged. Jet flight. He took off. This wasn't the aerostep. This was thrust. A continuous stream of high-velocity plasma erupted from his feet and back. He rocketed straight up, breaking the sound barrier with a deafening boom. He flew past the robot's arm, weaving through the debris. The G-force pressed against his eyes, threatening to black him out. He reached eye level with the zero-pointer. The massive machine's sensors focused on the tiny green speck. Izuku hovered there, his hair standing on end, his clothes flapping violently in the energy storm he was generating. He brought his hands together. Nejire uses waves. I use rails. He visualized the barrel of a gun. He extended his arms. He locked his elbows. He poured everything he had, the breakfast, the snacks, the emergency bar, the stored glycogen, into the space between his palms. A sphere of energy formed. It was small, the size of a marble, but it shone with the brightness of a welding torch. It whined, a high-pitched scream of compressed physics. Hey! Big guy! Izuku roared. The robot lunged. Izuku didn't flinch. Vitality overdrive. The marble collapsed in on itself. Railgun. He released the compression. It wasn't a beam. It was a lance of God. A pencil-thin line of pure, concentrated kinetic force erupted from his hands. It pierced the air, creating a vacuum tunnel. It struck the zero-pointer's faceplate. There was no explosion on the surface. The beam drilled straight through. It went through the reinforced armor, through the sensory cluster, through the central processor, and punched out the back of the robot's head, continuing into the sky where it parted the clouds. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the inside of the robot's head glowed orange. The circuitry melted. The massive machine groaned, its hydraulics failing. The zero-pointer began to tip backward, defeated by a hole no wider than a soda can. Izuku watched it fall, and then, his engine cut out. The green light vanished. The warmth left his body instantly, replaced by a bone-deep chill. His vision went gray. The hunger hit him, not an appetite, but a void. A starvation so sudden it felt like his stomach was collapsing. He fell from the sky, a ragdoll. I have no energy to land, he thought, his mind sluggish. I'm going to go splat. He saw the ground rushing up. Slap. A hand touched his cheek. He felt weightless. Uraraka, freed from the rubble by the distraction, floated next to him, clutching a piece of debris. She had slapped him in midair. Release! She gasped as they neared the ground. They tumbled onto the pavement. Izuku lay on his back, staring up at the smoke trailing from the robot's head. His limbs felt like lead. He couldn't move a finger. That, Izuku croaked, his voice dry and raspy, was expensive. Part 5, The Assessment. The silence in the observation room was absolute. The pro-heroes watched the monitors, mouths slightly agape. On the screen, the zero-pointer was a smoking ruin, and a small, green-haired boy was being loaded onto a stretcher by robots. That firepower, Midnight whispered. Is he related to Endeavor? Or All Might? No, Cementos said, tapping a tablet. Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, biodynamo. It says here his drawback is extreme metabolic exhaustion. He drilled through a zero-pointer, Vlad King grunted. That requires piercing power I haven't seen since All Might's prime. In the back of the room, All Might, in his skeletal form, sat with a proud, albeit worried smile. He watched as Recovery Girl on the screen handed Izuku a juice box, which the boy drank frantically even while semi-conscious. He lacks finesse, Aizawa said from the corner, his eyes narrowed. He cleared the robot, but look at him. He's completely incapacitated. If this were a real war zone, he'd be dead after that shot. True, Nizu, the principal squeaked, sipping his tea. But look at the rescue points. He didn't engage the zero-pointer for points. He engaged it to save the girl. He sacrificed his entire fuel reserve for one person. Nizu smiled, his whiskers twitching. Raw power without efficiency is dangerous. But a hero's heart with raw power? That is potential. And UA is the place to refine potential. Part 6, Aftermath. Izuku woke up in the nurse's office. The bed was soft. The air smelled of sterile cleaners and gummy bears. You're awake, a kind, elderly voice said. Recovery Girl sat on a stool, peeling a tangerine. Here. Eat this. And these. She pointed to a pile of chocolates on the bedside table. Izuku sat up, groaning. His muscles ached as if he'd run a marathon. He grabbed the chocolate and shoved 3 pieces into his mouth at once. How did I do? Izuku asked, chewing frantically. Physically? You depleted your glycogen stores to near zero, Recovery Girl scolded. You were hypoglycemic and in shock. Another few seconds and your heart might have stopped. You cannot use that railgun move lightly, Sonny. I know, Izuku swallowed. But the exam is over, she said. Go home. Rest. Eat a cow. Izuku walked out of UA an hour later, still munching on a bag of pretzels Recovery Girl had given him. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the campus. He felt drained but lighter. He had done it. He had fired the cannon, and he hadn't broken. Deku! Izuku jumped. Bakugo was leaning against the gate, looking furious. Keikaken? I saw the monitor, Bakugo spat, pushing off the wall. That big laser show at the end. You drilled the zero-pointer. Yeah, Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. I had to save Uraraka-san. Bakugo stared at him. His red eyes were unreadable. For a moment, Izuku expected an explosion. He expected screaming. Instead, Bakugo turned around. You have terrible aim, Bakugo muttered. You missed the fuel cell by 2 inches. If you'd hit that, the explosion would have wiped you out too. Izuku blinked. You analyzed my shot? I analyze everything, idiot. To beat you, I have to know what you're doing wrong. Bakugo snarled over his shoulder. Don't think this means you won. I still got more villain points. You're still just a battery that runs out. He walked away, hands in his pockets. Izuku smiled, clutching his bag of pretzels. I am a battery, Izuku whispered to the empty street. But I'm getting a bigger charge. He looked at his hand. Faintly, very faintly, the green light pulsed under his skin, ready for the next fight. Part 1. The caloric cost of dreams. The alarm clock didn't wake Izuku Midoriya. The hunger did. It was 5:30 a.m., the first day of his high school life at UA. And his stomach felt like a black hole had opened up beneath his ribs. It was a sharp, demanding ache that gnawed at his spine. This was the price of the biodynamo. His body was a furnace that never truly slept. Even in his dreams, his cells were vibrating, knitting muscle fibers denser, preparing for an output that defied physics. Izuku rolled out of bed, his feet hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He felt heavier than he had a year ago. Denser. Morning, Izuku, Inko Midoriya called from the kitchen. She sounded tired but happy. The smell of cooking rice, grilled fish, and miso soup wafted down the hallway. "Morning, Mom," Izuku croaked. He walked into the kitchen and sat down before a feast that would have fed a family of 4. There were 3 bowls of rice, a platter of mackerel, a dozen eggs, and a stack of toast. "Eat up," Inko smiled, placing a bottle of specialized vitamin supplements on the table. "You'll need the fuel." "It's the first day." Izuku didn't talk. He ate. He ate with the mechanical efficiency of a soldier reloading a weapon. Every bite was calculated. Carbohydrates for immediate access, proteins for repair, fats for the long burn. He consumed 4,000 calories in 20 minutes. As he chewed, his mind replayed the acceptance letter. The hologram of all might. "You have the heart of a hero. And the firepower of a battleship." He finished the last bowl of rice and stood up. The ache in his stomach subsided, replaced by the familiar, low-level hum of energy. It felt like carbonated water running through his veins. He went to his room and put on the uniform. The gray blazer with the green accents. It fit snugly across his shoulders. He adjusted the red tie, looking in the mirror. The boy staring back wasn't the timid, quirkless Deku of his childhood. His eyes were sharp, glowing faintly in the dim light. His build was stocky, compressed power wrapped in a high school uniform. He grabbed his yellow backpack. Inside, nestled between textbooks, were 6 high-density nutrient bricks, chocolate fudge flavor, and 3 pouches of glucose gel. "I'm off," he called out. "Izuku!" Inko caught him at the door. She straightened his collar, her eyes watering. "You're really going?" "Yue." "Yeah," Izuku smiled, and a spark of green static jumped from his cheek. "I'm going to be a hero, Mom. An efficient one." Part 2, 1A. The halls of UA were massive. The doors were towering, designed to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutations. Izuku navigated the corridors, checking the map on his phone. 1A, 1A. Here, he stood before the massive door. His heart rate spiked. "Calm down. High heart rate burns unnecessary sugar. Regulate." He took a deep breath, visualizing a dial in his chest turning down. The humming in his veins quieted. He slid the door open. "Remove your foot from the desk. It is an insult to the upperclassmen who used it before us and the craftsmen who built it." "Ha! Like I care about some dusty old desk." "What junior high are you from, you extra?" Izuku froze. The voices were familiar. Too familiar. Inside, Tenya Ida was chopping his hand in the air, reprimanding Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo sat with his feet up, an arrogant sneer on his face. "Oh, it's you," Ida stopped mid-chop. He turned to the door. "Midoriya." "Good morning." The entire class turned to look. The Green Comet. A red-haired boy with sharp teeth grinned. "I saw you at the entrance exam. You blew the head off that 0-pointer. It was manly as hell. You were scary." A short boy with purple balls for hair squeaked, hiding behind a desk. Bakugo's eyes snapped to Izuku. The air temperature seemed to drop. "Deku," Bakugo growled. He didn't yell. This was worse. It was a low, simmering acknowledgement. "You actually made it." "I told you I would, Kaken," Izuku said, walking to his seat, the one right behind Bakugo. He set his bag down carefully. "If you're here to make friends, you can pack up and leave." The voice came from the floor. Izuku looked down. A man in a yellow sleeping bag lay in the doorway like a discarded caterpillar. He unzipped the bag, revealing a scruffy face, tired eyes, and a mass of unkempt black hair. He stood up, slurping a jelly pouch. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down," the man said. "Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough." He stepped up to the podium. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa." The class gasped. "Homeroom teacher?" Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. "Put these on and meet me on the grounds." Immediately. Part 3, the Quirk apprehension test. The locker room was a flurry of activity. The boys changed quickly, exchanging names and quirks. "I'm Kirishima Aijiro," the redhead said, hardening his arm. "My quirk is hardening. It's strong, but kinda boring compared to yours, Midoriya." "Does your body always glow like that?" Izuku was shirtless, pulling on his track pants. His torso was a map of dense muscle, and faintly, under the skin, veins of emerald light pulsed rhythmically with his heartbeat. "It's a leakage," Izuku explained, grabbing a protein bar from his locker and taking a bite. "My body produces bioenergy constantly. If I don't vend it or use it, I get jittery. It glows when I'm metabolized." "Dude's a living glow stick," Kaminari Denki, a blonde with a lightning bolt streak in his hair, laughed. "I feel you. If I overuse my electricity, I fry my brain." "You just get hungry?" "Starving," Izuku admitted, swallowing the bar. "If I run out of fuel, I pass out instantly. That's why I have to eat." He gestured to the utility belt he was strapping over his gym uniform. It had pouches for food. "That's hardcore," Ciro Hanta nodded. They filed out onto the pea grounds. The sun was high, baking the dirt. Aizawa stood waiting, looking bored. "A Quirk apprehension test?" The class cried in unison. "What about the entrance ceremony?" "The orientation?" Uraraka asked. "If you're going to become a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events," Aizawa deadpanned. "UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well." He held up a softball. "Bakugo," Aizawa said. "You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw record in junior high?" 67 meters, Bakugo scoffed. "Try it with your Quirk." Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his shoulders, a feral grin spreading across his face. He glanced back at Izuku. "Watch this, nerd." D! Boom! Bakugo blasted the ball at the moment of release. The explosion sent a shockwave through the class. The ball rocketed into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. "Whoa! 700 meters?" Kaminari yelled. "That looks like fun!" Ashido Mina cheered. Aizawa's expression darkened. "Fun? You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that during a crisis?" He grinned, a terrifying expression that didn't reach his eyes. "All right. The student with the lowest total score across all 8 events will be judged as having no potential and will be expelled immediately." The cheer died instantly. "Expelled?" Uraraka cried. "That's not fair. It's the first day. Natural disasters, villain attacks, massive accidents. The world is full of unfairness," Aizawa said. "Heroes are the ones who overturn those situations. Now show me what you've got." Part 4: Speed and Grip. The first event was the 50-meter dash. Ida Tenya was up against Tsuyu Azuri. Engine boost. Ida roared, exhaust pipes on his legs firing. He crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. "He's like a sports car," Izuku muttered, taking notes mentally. Low friction, high torque. Then it was Izuku's turn. He was paired against Bakugo. They stood at the starting line. The tension was palpable. "Don't blink, Deku," Bakugo hissed, sparks popping in his palms. "On your marks. Get set." Gunshot. Bakugo used his explosions to propel himself backward, flying through the air. It was fast. Izuku didn't fly. He didn't run. Biodynamo, vector glide. He flooded his legs with energy, but instead of an explosive jump, he released a constant, high-pressure stream from the soles of his shoes, like a hydroplane skimming water. He hovered 2 inches off the ground, friction eliminated. He leaned forward at a 45-degree angle. Zoom! A streak of green light tore down the track. The wind pressure from his passing blew dust into the eyes of the onlookers. 3.02 seconds. The robot announced for Izuku. 4.13 seconds. For Bakugo. Izuku skidded to a halt, the soles of his shoes smoking. He breathed out, a puff of steam escaping his lips. Bakugo landed, staring at the time. You're faster than me?" "Only in a straight line, Kaken," Izuku said, grabbing a glucose tab from his pouch. "You have better turning radius." Bakugo grit his teeth, veins popping in his forehead. Next came the grip strength test. Izuku held the dynamometer. He squeezed. 56 kilograms. That was his base strength. Impressive for a teen, but not heroic. "Channel it," he whispered. "Don't shoot. Reinforce." He pushed the energy into his forearm muscles. The fibers swelled. Green light leaked from his pores, wrapping around the device. "Squeeze." The machine groaned. The metal handle began to bend. The digital display scrambled as the numbers shot up past 400 kilograms. 500 kilograms. Warning, the machine beeped. Izuku pushed harder. The hunger flared. He ignored it. More power. Suddenly, the green light vanished. Izuku felt the strength leave his arm instantly. He stumbled, gripping a device that now read 45 kilograms. What? Izuku looked at his hand. The energy was gone. He tried to summon it. Nothing. It was like the spark plugs had been pulled. He looked up. Aizawa stood there, his hair floating, his eyes glowing red. The scarf around his neck seemed to writhe like a snake. I erased your quirk, Aizawa said flatly. Eraserhead. Izuku realized. That test is for grip strength, not for crushing the school's property, Aizawa said, his voice low and dangerous. He walked closer to Izuku. I saw the entrance exam. You have zero control over your output throttle. You're either a flickering candle or a nuclear bomb. I was trying to reinforce. Izuku stammered. You were about to turn that dynamometer into shrapnel, Aizawa interrupted. You rely on brute force because you're scared of your own limits. Raw power without efficiency is just a firework. It's pretty, it's loud, and then it burns out and leaves nothing but smoke. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. The energy rushed back into Izuku's body, making him gasp. You have a massive tank, Midoriya, Aizawa said, turning away. But you're leaking fuel everywhere. Fix it, or you'll starve to death in the middle of a fight. Izuku stared at his hand. The class was silent. Even Bakugo looked surprised that the teacher had singled Izuku out so harshly. Efficiency, Izuku whispered. Right. Part 5, The Long Burn. The test continued. Standing long jump, Izuku cleared the sandbox easily. He used a burst of energy from his back, Retroblast, to propel himself like a rocket, landing well past the pit. Repeated side steps. This was harder. Rapid, small movements required rapid, small bursts. Izuku stuttered. Flash. Step. Flash. Step. It was jerky. Mineta, utilizing his bouncing balls, actually beat him here. By the time they reached the distance run, the toll was becoming visible. Yaoyorozu Momo, creating a bicycle to coast through the run, watched Izuku. He was running alongside the track, not using his quirk anymore. He was jogging, panting heavily, clutching a half-eaten protein brick. Midoriya-san, Momo called out as she cycled past. Your metabolic rate is fascinating. Judging by your thermal output, you're burning nearly 200 calories a minute while in your active state. Something like that, Izuku wheezed, swallowing the dry food. If I use the jet, I burn too fast. Gotta save it. He's like a battery that doesn't hold a charge, Kaminari observed from the sidelines. Awesome burst, but terrible mileage, Aizawa watched from his clipboard. He's rationing, he noted. He knows the ball throw is coming. He's saving the big guns. Part 6, The Railgun. Finally, the soft ball throw. Uraraka Ochako stepped up. She touched the ball, made it weightless, and threw it. It floated up. And up. And up. Infinity, Aizawa showed the device. Infinity? The class screamed. That's cheating. It's effective, Aizawa shrugged. Midoriya. You're next. Izuku walked to the circle. He felt heavy. The previous test had drained about 40% of his daily intake. He was starting to get the shivers, the early sign of hypoglycemia. He reached into his pocket and popped a pure glucose tablet. He crunched it, letting the sugar dissolve instantly under his tongue. Focus. He held the ball. Nejire-senpai uses spirals. They are stable, but slow. Bakugo uses explosions. They are fast, but chaotic. I need a rail. Izuku took a stance. He planted his feet wide. He brought the ball to his hip, cupping it in both hands. Green light began to gather. But this time, it was different. It wasn't the wild, crackling lightning of the entrance exam. It was a deep, resonating hum. The air around him began to warp. He's charging up, Kirishima whispered. Izuku visualized a tube. A tunnel of energy extending from his hand to the horizon. He compressed the energy behind the ball, building pressure. 30%. 40%. His arms shook. The veins on his neck stood out. The ground beneath his feet began to crack from the sheer weight of the energy he was holding. Don't throw it with your arm. Fire it with your body. Biodynamo. He whipped his body forward. Slipstream shot. He released the ball. There was no arc. There was no curve. Craxiolum. The sound was like a thunderclap right next to their ears. A ring of dust expanded outward from the circle, blowing the other student's hair back. The ball didn't fly, it vanished. It rode a beam of green light that pierced the sky, punching a hole through a cloud bank in the distance. They waited, and waited. Aizawa looked at his tablet. The device was calculating. It beeped once. Then twice. Aizawa turned the screen to the class. A creepy, satisfied grin stretched across his face. 2.4 kilometers. 2.4 kilometers? Ciro gasped. That's not a throw. That's a sniper rifle. He beat the explosion guy. Kaminari pointed. Izuku stood in the circle, his arms smoking. He wobbled slightly, his vision graying at the edges. That was 20% of my reserve, he calculated. Worth it. He turned to walk back to the group, and then, the volcano erupted. Dekawa! Bakugo launched himself from the crowd. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You bastard! You were hiding this? You were laughing at me this whole time with that power? Explosions popped in his hands as he flew toward Izuku. Tell me how you did that, you damn nerd! Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't cower. He was tired. He was hungry. And he was done being the victim. Izuku pivoted. His eyes glowed neon green. He raised a hand, palm open, fingers curled like claws. Tactile surge. He didn't fire a blast. He waited until Bakugo was within arm's reach. Before Bakugo could detonate an explosion, Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around Bakugo's torso and yanking him back. Stop it, Aizawa commanded, his hair floating again. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. Bakugo struggled against the capture cloth. Let me go. He cheated. He's been lying for years. I didn't lie, Kaken, Izuku said softly. The class went silent. Izuku looked at his childhood friend, his bully, his rival. I didn't hide anything, Izuku said, clenching his fist. The green light pulsed, illuminating the determination in his eyes. You called me a pebble on the side of the road. You said I was slow. You said I was weak. Izuku took a step forward. I just stopped holding back to make you feel comfortable. Bakugo froze. The shock on his face was genuine. Izuku had never spoken back like that. Not with confidence. Not with power backing it up. I'm going to be a hero, Izuku said. And I'm going to run right past you. Aizawa loosened the scarf. We're wasting time. Next person. Bakugo stood there, breathing heavy, staring at the ground. His hands twitched, small sparks dying against his palms. He didn't attack again. He just glared, a new, complicated hatred burning in his eyes. Part 7, The Verdict. The sun was setting by the time the test concluded. The class gathered around Aizawa for the results. Here are the total rankings, Aizawa said, projecting a hologram. It's a cumulative score based on performance. Izuku looked at the board. 1. Momo Yayorozu, consistent, versatile. 2. Shoto Todoroki, raw power, endurance. 3. Katsuki Bakugo, top-tier athleticism. 4. Tenya Ada, speed specialist. 5. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku let out a breath. 5th. He had crushed the dash, the jump, and the throw. But his stamina on the endurance run and his clumsiness on the side steps had dragged his average down. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Izuku straightened up. Yes, sir. You have the highest raw output in the class, Aizawa stated. Your ball throw was higher than many pros could achieve. But look at you. He gestured to Izuku. Izuku was pale. His hands were shaking slightly as he unwrapped another protein bar. You are running on fumes. If we had one more test, you would have collapsed, Aizawa said. In the field, you don't get snack breaks. You need to improve your fuel efficiency, or you'll be a liability. I understand, Izuku nodded. Also, Aizawa grinned, I lied about the expulsion. Huh? The class screamed. It was a rational deception to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa said, turning to walk away. That was obviously a lie, Momo commented, though she looked relieved. That was terrifying. Uraraka sighed, slumping over. As the class began to disperse, talking excitedly about the day, Aizawa stopped near the corner of the building. All Might was hiding there, peeking around the brickwork. You're a liar, Aizawa, All Might whispered. You were planning to expel someone. You expelled an entire class last year. They had zero potential, Aizawa shrugged. He glanced back at the students. His eyes lingered on the green-haired boy who was currently explaining the nutritional content of his protein bar to a confused Uraraka. That kid. Midoriya, Aizawa muttered. What about him? He's reckless. He's dangerous to himself. He has a massive chip on his shoulder regarding Bakugo, Aizawa listed. Then, a small smile touched his lips. But for a second there, during the grip test, when I erased his quirk, he didn't look scared because he lost his power. He looked annoyed that I stopped him. Aizawa walked off. He's not a glass cannon, All Might. He's a reactor waiting for control rods. Keep an eye on him. Part 8, The Walk Home. Midoriya! Wait up! Izuku turned to see Uraraka running toward him. Ida was walking stiffly beside her. Hey Uraraka-san, Ida-kun, Izuku smiled. He felt better after eating 2 more bars. That was amazing! Uraraka beamed. That throw, and the way you stood up to Bakugo, is he always that intense? Yeah, Izuku sighed. Since we were 4. But, it felt good to finally say it. You are certainly powerful, Ida noted, adjusting his glasses. Though Aizawa-sensei is right. Your energy consumption seems problematic. Have you considered a liquid fuel injection system for your hero costume? Izuku's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. I sketched something like that in my notebook. If I can bypass digestion and inject glucose directly into the bloodstream via an N4 suit. That sounds terrifyingly medical, Uraraka laughed. But hey, we survived day 1. Yeah, Izuku looked at the setting sun. We survived. He clenched his hand. The memory of the 2.4 kilometers throw lingered in his muscles. The power was there. The will was there. Now, he just needed to make it last longer than a microwave timer. As they walked to the station, Izuku didn't notice the pair of red eyes watching him from the alleyway, seething with a mixture of rage and reluctant acknowledgement. The rivalry had officially begun. Part 1. The suit makes the hero. The excitement in the 1A locker room was palpable, a buzzing electric current that rivaled the energy humming beneath Izuku Midoriya's own skin. Rows of metal cases lined the walls, each marked with a student's seat number. Hero Basic Training. Kirishima pumped a fist into the air, his hardening quirk turning his knuckles into jagged rocks. This is it, guys. We finally get to look the part. Izuku stood before locker 18. His breath hitched in his throat. He had sent his designs to the support company weeks ago, sketches comprised of obsessive notes, caloric calculations, and thermal venting requirements. He wondered how much of his rambling muttering had actually translated into fabric and steel. He popped the latch. The case hissed open. Inside lay a suit that was miles away from the simple teal jumpsuit his mother had bought him in another life. This was military-grade hardware. Whoa, Midoriya! Kaminari leaned over, a half-zipped jacket hanging off his shoulder. That looks serious. Are you going to war? Izuku pulled out the chest piece. It was a dark, matte green compression material, reinforced with black ballistic plating over the vitals. But the most striking features were the glowing tubes running along the arms and legs, bioluminescent indicators connected to sensors on the inside of the suit. It's functional, Izuku stammered, his cheeks flushing. 10 minutes later, Class 1A emerged from the tunnel into the mock city of Ground Beta. They say the clothes make the man, young men and ladies. All Might stood with his hands on his hips, his cape billowing in a wind that he seemed to generate himself. Be fully aware. From now on, you are heroes. The class looked spectacular. Uraraka in her pink and black gravity suit, Ida in his white armored plating, Bakugo in his intimidation-heavy grenadier getup. But eyes kept drifting to Izuku. His costume was a marvel of efficiency. The dark green bodysuit hugged his muscular frame, designed to compress his muscles to reduce the recoil damage from his own quirk. On his forearms were bulky, vented gauntlets made of a white heat-resistant alloy. A heavy utility belt sat at his waist, filled not with gadgets, but with pouches of high-density glucose gel and nutrient bars. Around his neck was a metallic collar that served as a heat sink, and on his back was a small, sleek pack with 2 thruster vents aimed downward. "Looking good, Deku," Uraraka chirped, adjusting her bulky boots. "It looks sturdy." "Thanks, Uraraka-san," Izuku smiled. He tapped the gauge on his left wrist. It read fuel, 92%. Temp stable. "It helps me regulate. If I get too hot, the vents open automatically to release the excess plasma so I don't cook my internal organs. That is, oddly graphic, as you noted with a rib bit. And terrifying," Mineta added. All Might cleared his throat, pulling a script from his pocket. "Now, we shall begin combat training. The scenario: villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout. The heroes must enter, locate the weapon, and secure it, either by capturing the villains or touching the bomb." He held up a box. "Teams will be decided by lottery." Izuku watched the screen as names were drawn. His heart pounded. Please don't be Kakin. Please don't be Kakin. Team A, Heroes Izuku Midoriya Ochako Uraraka. Team D, Villains Katsuki Bakugo Tenya Ida. The air in the monitoring room seemed to freeze. Izuku looked across the crowd. Bakugo was staring at him. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making explosions. He was smiling. It was a sharp, jagged smile that promised violence. "Fate has a sense of humor," All Might muttered under his breath. He spoke up. "Team A and Team D. You're up first. Villains, you have 5 minutes to set up inside. Heroes, wait at the perimeter." Part 2, the pre-game calculation. Inside the shadowy interior of the concrete building, the air was cool and dusty. "So," Ida said, tapping his chin as he paced around the papier-mâché bomb on the 5th floor. "Bakugo-kun, we must discuss strategy. Midoriya is powerful, but his stamina is his weakness. If we can force him to expend energy early." "I don't care about strategy," Bakugo growled. He was standing by the door, staring at the floor map. "I'm going to crush him." "Bakugo, the mission is to protect the weapon." Ida chopped his hand. "Midoriya has a ranged advantage with those railgun blasts. We should barricade the room and force him into close quarters where your explosions are superior." Bakugo turned, his eyes glowing red in the gloom. "You don't get it, Four Eyes. That nerd, he thinks he's better than me. He thinks he can look down on me because he has some flashy laser show. I'm going to intercept him. I'm going to make him use every ounce of that fuel until he's running on empty, and then I'm going to break him." Bakugo kicked the door open and stomped into the hallway. "You guard the toy. I'm going hunting." "Wait. Bakugo." Ida sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Communication is key." This is going to be difficult." Outside, in the bright sunlight, Izuku was studying the building blueprints All Might had provided. His eyes darted back and forth, muttering rapidly. "Okay, 5 floors. Reinforced concrete. Kakin won't wait. He'll come for me. His pride won't let him sit by the bomb." "Deku-kun?" Uraraka leaned in. "You okay? You're sweating." "I'm fine," Izuku said, snapping the map shut. I know him. Kakin is going to attack immediately. He wants a duel. So what do? "We split up," Izuku said firmly. "I'll draw his fire. I'll keep him occupied. While he's focused on me, you use your zero-gravity to float up the central shaft or the outside windows and find the bomb. Ida-kun will be guarding it, but without Kakin, it'll be one-on-one." "But..." Uraraka looked worried. "Bakugo is scary. And you said your quirk burns energy. If you fight him too long..." "I won't fight him long." Izuku tightened his gloves. The vents on his suit hissed, releasing a small puff of green steam. "I'm not going to try to overpower him. I'm going to dismantle him. Start." All Might's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. Part 3, the ambush. Izuku and Uraraka entered through a second-story window, avoiding the front door entirely. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint green glow emanating from the tubing on Izuku's suit. Step. 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 It's too quiet, Uraraka whispered. He's here, Izuku said. He could feel it. The air pressure was different. They rounded a corner. Die, DKU. Bakugo lunged from a side room, his right gauntlet primed. He didn't just fire a blast. He swung his arm like a club, detonating a massive explosion point blank at Izuku's face. Boom! Smoke filled the corridor. Uraraka screamed, shielding her eyes. Deku-kun, he's fast, Bakugo grinned, landing in a crouch. But I'm faster. As the smoke cleared, a green barrier flickered and died. Izuku stood unharmed. He had his left arm raised, and a translucent, honeycomb-patterned shield of green energy was fading in front of him. Biocowl, shielding, Izuku stated calmly. I hardened the energy density to deflect the heat and shockwave. It cost me about 50 calories. Bakugo's eye twitched. You're counting calories? In a fight? Uraraka, go! Izuku yelled. Uraraka didn't hesitate. She tapped her chest, made herself light, and sprinted down the opposite hallway. Don't ignore me! Bakugo roared. He raised his hand to blast Uraraka. Izuku moved. Jet step. A burst of green light exploded from Izuku's boot. He closed the 10-meter gap instantly. He didn't punch Bakugo. He grabbed Bakugo's wrist, forcing the aim upward. Bang! The explosion scorched the ceiling. You want to fight me, Kaken? Izuku locked eyes with him. His irises were luminous neon. Then fight me. Leave her out of it. Bakugo ripped his arm free, spinning to deliver a roundhouse kick infused with explosions. Izuku ducked, the heat singing his hair. You think you're some big shot now because you learned to shoot straight? Bakugo screamed, firing a barrage of rapid blasts. Bam! 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 Izuku weaved through them. He wasn't blocking anymore. Blocking cost energy. He was dodging. His movements were jagged, sharp bursts of speed utilizing the thrusters on his back. Left. Right. Slide. I don't think I'm a big shot, Izuku panted, sliding between Bakugo's legs and blasting himself back to create distance. I just realized that chasing after you was inefficient. Inefficient? Bakugo looked like he was about to pop a vein. You calling me a waste of time? Bakugo raised his right arm. He reached for the pin on his grenade gauntlet. Young Bakugo, stop! All Might's voice crackled over the earpiece. You'll kill him inside a confined space. He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo grinned maniacally. He pulled the pin. A massive torrent of fire erupted down the hallway. It consumed everything, turning the corridor into a blast furnace. Part 4 Tactile Surge. The fire dissipated. The walls were scorched black. The windows were blown out, but the hallway was empty. What? Bakugo blinked. Up here. Bakugo looked up. Izuku was clinging to the ceiling, held there by green energy pulsing from his hands and feet. He had used the vertical thrust to jump over the blast wave. He dropped. Too slow. Bakugo raised his other gauntlet for a point-blank shot. Izuku didn't dodge this time. He reached out with his right hand. His glove glowed blindingly bright, not a beam, but a contained star. He grabbed the metal barrel of Bakugo's grenade gauntlet. You expect a beam struggle, Izuku gritted out. You expect me to push back against your force. Bakugo tried to fire. Nothing happened. What? Biodynamo, tactile surge. Izuku pumped a high-frequency vibration of kinetic energy directly into the metal of the gauntlet. The energy didn't explode outward. It traveled through the weapon. Crack snap. The internal mechanisms of the gauntlet shattered. The firing pin fused. The metal heated up instantly to searing temperatures. But the surge didn't stop there. It traveled up Bakugo's arm. It wasn't damaging like a burn. It was a neural shock. The kinetic vibration numbed the nerves in Bakugo's arm instantly. Gah! Bakugo gasped, dropping to one knee. His right arm hung limp, the heavy, broken gauntlet dragging it down. My arm! I can't feel my arm. It's just numbed, Izuku said, stepping back. His breathing was heavy. That move had required precise, dense control. Fuel check, 78%. Like hitting your funny bone, but 1,000 times harder. It'll wear off in 10 minutes. Bakugo stared at his useless limb, then up at Izuku. The look of absolute shock on his face was satisfying, but Izuku didn't have time to gloat. I'm not playing your game, Kaken, Izuku said. I'm not here to prove who is stronger. I'm here to win the mission. Bakugo scrambled up, swinging his left hand wildly. Don't you dare walk away from me. Izuku turned his back. The thrusters on his pack flared to life. The vents on his calves opened. Flight mode, vector jet. With a sound like a tearing canvas, Izuku shot down the hallway. He didn't run. He flew horizontally, feet inches off the ground, banking off the walls to turn corners at breakneck speed. He left Bakugo standing alone in the scorched hallway, screaming at a green trail of light. Part 5, The Stronghold. On the 5th floor, Uraraka was hiding behind a pillar. Ida had cleared the room completely. There was nothing to float. No chairs, no desks, no debris. Just the bomb, Ida, and smooth concrete. Come out, Uraraka-kun! Ida shouted, adopting a villainous pose. I, the master of evil, have predicted your gravity tactics. I have removed all ammunition. He's really getting into character, Uraraka whispered nervously. And without debris, I can't create a distraction to get close. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shook. Vim! A sound like a jet engine approaching grew louder. Bakugo? Ida looked at the door. No. That sound is too constant. Boom! The heavy iron door to the bomb room didn't open. It was blown off its hinges. Izuku flew into the room, riding a stream of green fire. He did a mid-air flip and landed in a crouch next to Uraraka. Deku-kun! Uraraka cheered. You got away! Temporarily, Izuku panted. He popped a glucose tab into his mouth through a slot in his mask. Kaken is coming. He's climbing the stairs. We have maybe 60 seconds. Ida cleared the room. Uraraka pointed. I can't get close. He's too fast. Izuku scanned the room. Ida stood by the bomb, engines revving. Midoriya! Ida laughed. You made it past Bakugo? Impressive. But you are in my domain now. Without obstacles, my speed is unmatched. He's right, Izuku muttered. If I shoot a railgun in here, I might hit the bomb or blow a hole in the wall and drop the ceiling on us. Too much collateral damage. So what do we do? Izuku looked at Ida, then at the smooth floor. Ida relies on traction, Izuku noted. And he relies on straight lines. Here I come! Ida roared. Recipro burst. Ida vanished. He was a blur of blue and white armor. He bypassed Izuku entirely, aiming to capture Uraraka. Look out! Uraraka squeaked. Izuku didn't try to chase him. He couldn't match Recipro burst in short-range reflex speed. Instead, Izuku slammed both fists onto the ground. Biodynamo, Omnipulse. He didn't fire a beam. He released a 360-degree shockwave. It was a dome of green force that expanded outward from Izuku's body. It wasn't lethal, it was a heavy, physical wave of air pressure. The pulse hit Ida mid-stride. Because Ida was moving so fast, the sudden wall of pressure threw off his balance completely. It was like a race car hitting a speed bump at 200 miles per hour. Whoa! Ida spun out. He tumbled through the air, crashing into the far wall with a loud clang. The pulse also shattered the windows, sucking air out, and, crucially, pulverized the concrete floor around Izuku, turning the smooth surface into a field of gravel and chunks of cement. Uraraka! Now! Izuku yelled, pointing at the debris he had just created. Right! Uraraka slapped the floating rocks. Comet home run! She grabbed a pillar-sized chunk of concrete, made it weightless, and swung it. The debris flew at Ida, who was still trying to recover from the crash. Impudent! Ida scrambled up, engine sputtering. He managed to dodge the debris, but he was distracted. He didn't see Izuku. Izuku had used the cover of the debris to close the distance. He wasn't flying now. He was sliding on the floor using low-output bursts. He appeared right in front of Ida. It's over, Ida-kun! Izuku coated his shoulder in green energy, shoulder check, and slammed into Ida's chest plate. The impact knocked the breath out of the speedster. Ida flew backward, away from the weapon. Uraraka! The bomb! Uraraka dove. She floated herself, swimming through the air past the stunned Ida. She wrapped her arms around the papier-mâché core. Captured! She yelled. Hero team wins! All Might's voice echoed through the building. Just as the buzzer sounded, the door frame exploded. Bakugo stood there. He was covered in soot, breathing raggedly. His right arm was still hanging limp, but his left hand was sparking violently. DKU! He screamed, stepping into the room. I'm not done! Get up and fight, young Bakugo! All Might yelled over the comms. The match is over. Stand down or you will face suspension. Bakugo froze. He looked at Izuku, who was sitting on the floor, exhausted, giving a thumbs up to Uraraka. Izuku looked back at Bakugo. He didn't look scared. He looked tired. We won, Kaken, Izuku said softly. The mission is what matters. Bakugo stared at him, his entire body trembling with suppressed rage. He looked at his broken gauntlet. He looked at the bomb. He turned around and punched the wall, leaving a scorch mark, before storming off without a word. Part 6. The Classroom Critique. Back in the monitoring room, the atmosphere was heavy. Izuku stood next to Uraraka. He was drinking a recovery shake, the tubes on his suit glowing a dim, fading green as he cooled down. Well done, everyone! All Might said, though he looked a bit shaken by the intensity of the fight. Now, who can tell me who the MVP of this battle was? Yayorozu raised her hand instantly. It was Ida-san, she stated. Eh? Uraraka blinked. But we won! Ida-san was the only one who adapted to the scenario properly, Yayorozu explained, pushing up her imaginary glasses. He cleared the room to counter Uraraka. He communicated. He stayed on the objective. She turned to Bakugo, who was sulking in the corner. Bakugo-san abandoned the mission due to a personal grudge. It was reckless and unprofessional. She then turned to Izuku. And Midoriya-san, while your strategy was effective, it was dangerous. Breaking the gauntlet? That could have caused permanent injury if you miscalculated the frequency, and the Omnipulse damaged the structural integrity of the floor. If that were a real building, it might have collapsed. Izuku lowered his head. You're right. I got caught up in stopping Kaken. I used too much power. However, All Might interjected, stepping in. Young Midoriya also showed exceptional combat adaptability. The tactile surge to disable a weapon rather than the person? That is a high-level capture technique. And creating debris for his teammate to use? That is synergy. All Might looked at Izuku. You have great power, Midoriya. But you treat your body like a machine. You calculate fuel and output, but you forget that you are flesh and blood. Bakugo got under your skin, and you burned resources trying to prove a point. Izuku nodded. He checked his wrist gauge. Fuel, 15%. He had almost bottomed out again. I'll do better, Izuku promised. Part 7. After class, the sun was setting. The students were leaving the building, exhausted. Izuku changed back into his uniform. He felt the familiar hunger pangs, but he had eaten enough to stave off the fainting spell. Midoriya. Izuku stopped at the school gate. Bakugo was waiting for him. Kaken, Izuku said warily. Bakugo didn't yell. He looked at the ground. That move, with the gauntlet. You put vibrations into the metal. Yeah, Izuku said. It's harder than shooting. I have to match the resonance frequency of the material. You numbed my arm, Bakugo said, clenching his right fist, which was still shaking slightly. I couldn't move it for 10 minutes. I didn't want to hurt you, Izuku said. Bakugo looked up. His eyes were red and wet. Not with tears of sadness, but tears of pure frustration. You didn't want to hurt me? Bakugo laughed, a dry, cracking sound. That's what pisses me off. You beat me, and you were holding back. You were trying to save me. Bakugo took a step forward, grabbing Izuku's collar. Listen here, Deku. I'm just getting started. I'm going to figure out your stupid quirk. I'm going to learn how to dodge your rails. And next time I won't let you disable me. I'm going to be number one. You hear me? He shoved Izuku back and turned to walk away. I'm not losing to a battery pack. Izuku watched him go. A smile touched his lips. I know, Kaken, Izuku whispered. That's why I have to keep charging up. As Izuku walked toward the station, he felt a strange sensation. Not hunger. Not exhaustion. It was satisfaction. He wasn't the quirkless kid following behind anymore. He was the jet fighter soaring ahead. And for the first time, Bakugo was the one chasing him.